who you're with. And then, because of the times when we've done this before, we found that we had more questions than there was time. So we're going to start right off with your questions. So be thinking. Your questions are going to get us rolling here. And with that, just introduce yourself and pass the microphone down.
Tom Brennan, Manchester School District.
Bill Wilmot, Seacoast Charter School.
Virginia Barry, Department of Education.
Patty Humphrey, New Hampshire Center for Innovative Schools, and school board member of the Academy of Science and Design Charter School.
All right, well, we have one last panelist who's making her way down now. So we can wait. And in radio, we're used to filling. So let me just see if, with a show of hands, is anyone about ready to ask a question? All right, we're going to get going here. Thanks very much. Why don't you just have a seat and introduce yourself, and then we'll get rolling.
Good evening. Molly Kelly, and I am a state senator and have been chairing education in the state.
Great. Hold on to that microphone. You might need it. All right. A couple of old friends of mine are in the crowd, and I just want to acknowledge that they're here. One is Senator Lou D'Alessandro. Someplace, I don't know where he is.
There he is.
All right. And Fred Bramante. Fred, good to see you. How are you? I'm fine. Good to see you. All right. Well, you in the yellow shirt, your hand went up like a bullet. Sure. So, your question, please.
My name's Dan. I'm from Manchester, and hello, Dr. Brennan. I know we've met before, but I was just curious if you've set a date to actually watch this with Mayor Gatzis.
Okay, so did everyone hear the question? Okay, here we go.
Just curious.
The question was, has Mr. Brennan set a date to watch this with Mayor Ted Gatzis?
No, I had not seen it until this evening, so I imagine as soon as I get back to the office tomorrow, we'll probably have a conversation. I think actually the whole board, the school committee, and the aldermen should join us.
I agree. I figured I'd get the ball rolling.
Well, it was quick and to the point. And you also had a question right away.
Yes, Chris Northrup from Concord. For anybody, do we still need teachers' unions?
Okay, so the question was from Chris from Concord, do we still need teachers' unions? So who would like to begin?
Oh, here we go again. I think we need representation. I don't know if we need the what I perceive and what I saw in terms of the movie, the protection, the seeming, in my opinion, unrealistic protection, limits, restrictions. But I do think people need to be represented. I just think it needs somehow to be more relevant to the current situation we find ourselves in.
I'll answer that too. I think the teachers' unions have a long history, in a lot of ways a positive history for teachers and for education, public education in the U.S. I think that what Dr. Brennan said about representation is key. I think that unfortunately teachers' unions are not they're not representing kind of the full measure of what teachers would like their engagement with their employer or with their life's work to be. I think teachers need to be fully engaged in the life of a school, and that means, you know, engaged with the administration, engaged with the school board on the vision and direction of the school. But that's, by and large, not what teachers' unions are engaged in. And I think that the focus of teachers' unions has become very narrow. It's about
That was somebody from the NEA.
Connie said it's all automatic. Has become very, very narrowly focused on a few items of, you know, what the workday looks like, what the in a very kind of low-level way, what the workday looks like, what salaries and benefits look like. All of those things are important, but to me, what's even more important for what students are learning every day is how each teacher individually is engaged with the school and engaging their own mind and their own intellect in the work that they're doing every day.
My only comment with that was in looking at the movie and the history, when you saw the role of the unions for the teachers, where, you know, mostly women were teaching, and there was a real role to protect them and protect jobs. But so it seems to me that why not engage the unions in leadership in making some of these changes? Because I think that the core and the history of the unions was to make schools better and to protect teachers as well, and good teachers. So I think it would be open the dialogue up and ask them how can they become more a part of the leadership and making the changes that obviously need to be changed, as we saw tonight.
You want to pass that down to Patty on the end?
In preparation for being here tonight, I looked at some websites of other states and what's going on, and I noticed that in Massachusetts, they've recently passed a law creating innovation schools, which are in-district charter schools where the teachers have some leeway to bargain with the unions for more flexibility. And that seems like an ideal place to start, and I think it's something we should all look at here in New Hampshire.
I think that one of the things that's important is to recognize that New Hampshire has really been engaged in the last year in very close work with our teachers' unions, and looking at the whole issue of teacher effectiveness and student performance has been something that our unions, given the size of our state, have been willing to engage in that conversation. They've been very participatory in looking at what will be the elements that we would look at as a state in terms of teaching effectiveness. How could we measure teachers? How could we measure their effectiveness in relationship not only to student performance in 1 year's growth of time, but to look at teacher effectiveness in a whole variety of different ways. Not like Massachusetts, our partner state, is looking at 51% standardized test scores, and most research tells us that looking at only and singularly test scores is not a good measure of human development. So I think that I could say honestly that New Hampshire is probably one of the only states in the United States that's chosen to use a collaborative method and engage not only teachers and leaders and parents and state board members and policymakers in the conversation to make a determination of what would be best for our state and for our children. And in terms of innovation states, New Hampshire was just recognized and was invited to become an innovation state. So I think that many of the, not only our charter schools, but many of our excellent, fine schools in the state, as well as our schools that are dealing with some significant concerns in their schools, are making many, many strides to move forward. And I want to point out one last thing, that New Hampshire, when you look at national scores, that we lead the country. And while they're not 80% or 90%, they are certainly higher than many of the scores that you saw this evening in this movie. What I think is really exciting about that, and that is that New Hampshire has the capacity to bring about the transformation that you saw in this film tonight. And I think we'll probably get into some of those issues. Thank you.
All right, another question, please. Way in the back there, you sir.
Yeah, one of the graphics in the movie indicated that in the next, I forget how many years, there'll be 123 million jobs, of which we'll have 50 million people that will be able to do those jobs. And that was in the fields of math and science. We are a quantitative society, yet our state requirement in mathematics at this point is 3 years, one of which will be the comparable of Algebra 1. Every study that's been out, and the large one done by Bill Gates out in Washington, the one we did here at Plymouth State a few years ago said every student, whether you're going into the workforce or you're going on to college, you need at least 3 years of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and if you're going on to college, you should probably have something beyond that. Are there any plans in this state to up those requirements to prepare our students for the jobs that are going to be there?